Welcome back to Get Your House in Order, the podcast where we dive deep into stories and strategies and decisions that shape our lives, financially, emotionally, and everything in between. Today, I'm joined by Sharyn, and she's a remarkable voice in the world of psychology, conflict resolution, family dynamics. And I'm really happy to have her here because we're going to talk about things that affect everyone every single day. We unpack everything from how the way people approach family conflict to the myths that we tell ourselves about money or other concepts, and the tools that can give you clarity and compassion, because ultimately we want to create the little thought in your head that will get you to think how you can be in a better place. So whether you're a parent or a professional or someone is just simply trying to live more intentionally, there's something in this episode for you. So Sharyn, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us your time. So tell us a little bit about you, and we can get started.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I love all the conversations that you're having. I love the way that you're supporting community. I've worked in community and community support my whole life. I started off working in education, and then I moved from there into social service. And all my work, I thought that I was going to be an educator, and I thought that I was kind of an early years person. And the more I worked in that setting, the more I realized parents were the ones who needed the support. And that there was a way for me to support in a classroom or in a private school environment where I could actually be looking to understand the parents and have their voices heard and really get in touch with what their needs were. So I ended up working in social service and just ran a parenting center for many years and worked alongside child protection, and really my heart broke for a lot of the parents who were not getting the kind of support that they needed. And so I've devoted my entire career to supporting parents. And I see that as a way to really, help kind of change what's happening in the next generation, right? So if you support the parents, you're going to then end up with the next generation of adult citizens in society who were raised with healthier people, raised with more balance, and ultimately doing better in their lives.
And you know what? I think you hit a really strong point. I think the day I kind of realized that I was growing up was the day that you understand that as a parent, you officially have no idea what you're doing and you're trying your best. And you're probably trying to continue the messages that your parents gave you, but then you're in the middle of questioning whether those messages remain valid in your circumstances.
Yeah.
And you acknowledge that your kid is not you, and your kid is a different person on its own. And you mean you're trying your best, but at the end of the day, nobody knows what they're doing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I see that too in business. People are trying to build their business. They're following their passion. They're trying their utmost best, trying to get messages and instructions from other people, right? But it's only until you sit down and you figure out yourself, what is it that you really want for yourself, and what you're trying to do your best with your kid. And you have the conversation with your kid, be it as estate planning or intergenerational business transfers or whatever it is. I think you share the weight with a family, you treat your kid as an adult, whatever the age is, or as a person, and then you can really let go of a weight that nobody put on you, but you assume somebody put on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I love how you started that whole passage there. I like that idea of, once you become a parent, you have this eye-opening, awakening moment where you're, revisiting and taking stock of who you are, because you're suddenly in this position. Like people, I've worked with couples who want to decide to have a child or not have a child. That's one of the most challenging situations to work with people, right? Because who makes that decision, and why do you make that decision? Some people just say, yeah, naturally I'm going to have a child. Everybody gets older and everybody becomes a parent. For some people, that's a natural progression, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're equipped to raise another human. And you're right. People get, actually the hope is that people get kind of slapped in the face and awakened in that moment of, I don't know what I'm doing. But I actually think that's a necessary moment because you're raising another adult, right? So when I work with parents, I'm often reminding them or maybe telling them for the first time, right? This is not about you raising this child this day in this moment. This is you raising a full-grown adult. You are every moment of parenting. You are planting seeds in what will then become an adult in society who needs to be a citizen, who needs to be able to function. So there's, like in business, you said, it's kind of like business. Like in business, you need to have a vision. You need to have kind of an emotional mission statement. You need to know where you're going in your parenting. And for a lot of parents, and perhaps this is true in finances and other places, I think it is, we're very short-sighted, right? So I'm going to spend all my money today. I'm not going to plan for the future, right? That same idea. I'm going to parent my child today. I'm going to get them to hang up their backpack and unpack their lunch and do their homework. But where's the long range plan? So when I work with parents, I help them shift their mindset to think about the adult that they're raising. And I will relate all of the interactions that are happening today into what those seeds are going to, what the harvest will be later.
Yeah, no, I was having that conversation because I'm going through that right now. My eldest is off to university and it's not easy, right? And I've all my life I said, I'm going to raise these kids and with their dad is, we're on the same page. We're going to raise these kids to be able to find a job and keep it, right? And be good citizens and be empathetic and aware of their surroundings and really colorblind, really treat everyone equally and give them a real shot at being someone in life. And that comes with accountability and discipline and hard work. And we've been super blessed that they've had the opportunity to be exposed to very different situations, and that builds their character.
Yeah.
Now, it sounds really romantic, but now that he's leaving, I'm gutted. But at least I think that he has a better chance in life. I find sometimes we're tempted to do everything for them. And I think that robs them from the belief and confidence that they can actually do it and that they're smart and they're competent and they're capable. And it's a lot easier for you to do it and faster. But are you really helping them?
Right. And that's exactly it. I think parents they buy into that. It's a trap, really, right? Like exactly what you said. It's faster, it's easier. I'll just get in and do whatever it is. There's this concept of contribution. And as humans, there's a need that we have to fulfill that sense of contribution. And it shows up in kids, actually. It shows up in kids. There's a sweet spot around age 7 or 8. But even younger, right? Their parents will talk about their 2-year-old who's trying to take the laundry and pull it out of the machine or, help fold the laundry or put it away. So they start to see, adult behavior, responsible behavior, and they have this intrinsic drive to contribute. And that sense of contribution is actually, like I said, when we talk about the long range, what I call, long range parenting, right? It's linked to their sense of self. It's linked to their sense of worth and value, right? If I have value, so I'll say the home is the microcosm of community. So you're creating a community experience of what it means to be a community member in your home. And that's why I don't believe in the word chores. I don't believe in, a lot of things I don't believe in, because everybody in the house, including the children, are community members. And everybody has, if you think about it that way, everybody has a contribution, right? A valuable contribution. And in community, in the world, we're all looking for where can I contribute? Where can I feel good about myself because I have something to offer that's going to better society, my neighborhood, my home. So what parents will do, as you said, they will interfere with that natural development of that sense of contribution because there's no time and I've got to do it. Just going to do it. I'll do it faster. I'll load the dishwasher. I'll unload it. I'll put away your things because I want it done. Some of it is I want it done. There's no time. So parents have a patience issue. Some of it is I want it done right. And so parents miss the part about skill training for their child. And then if we don't actually capitalize on that era with a child that kind of like I think the peak can be around age 8, it can go dormant. And then we have kids who resist wanting to help and contribute because the parent hasn't helped cultivate that feeling in them. And so now it just feels like, well, somebody wants me to do stuff and I don't want to do it. But if we actually bring them along and allow them to do things, and there's a whole way of interacting in that way, that's going to be building their sense of self and their self-worth later on.
And listen, I think we're all guilty of doing that. But by not stopping and figuring out that you are robbing the kid from their ability to contribute to society and whatever level it is, at whatever age it is, you're also perpetuating the problem because that kid won't know how to change that for their own kids.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're role modeling. We're always modeling. I like to say kids are collecting data all the time from birth onward. They're collecting data. They're watching parents. They're watching their trusted adults and how they function in society. So if this is what you're doing, they're either going to take that on or they're going to grow up to be in resistance to it or some combination of that. But they're collecting data all the time. You represent what it means to be a person to them. This is how you function. If you're often frustrated, they might embody frustration. If you're impatient, they might embody impatience. You're setting the tone for how they see the world and how they think people should be behaving. Even if you're showing up in subpar ways, they don't know that, right? So they're going to take on whatever you put on display.
That's all they know, I guess. So your work focuses on helping parents navigate complex emotional terrain. What's the biggest get your house in order moment that you find families avoiding? And what does that cost them when they do avoid?
Yeah, I like this idea of like a house in order, right? Which is kind of the theme that you have. And I think one of the biggest house in order moments that I see parents avoiding is actually turning inward. Like getting curious about their own emotional landscape, right? Most of us weren't raised with language for our feelings or shown like what it looks like to validate our own experiences. But that internal awareness is actually the foundation for parenting well. When we don't know how we feel, right, and we don't know how to feel our feelings and offer ourselves self-compassion, then it becomes really hard to then extend that same empathy to our kids, right? So we end up reacting instead of responding, right? Or we shut down, or we snap, or we feel like overwhelmed with guilt after an interaction with our kids, right? And then over time, that creates this disconnection in the home. Even when parents love their kids deeply, and parents do, they love their kids deeply, but even with that disconnection will happen. So getting our emotional house in order as a parent, I think, means building the skills to feel, to express, to regulate our own emotion. And it's not self-indulgent to do that. It's actually a responsibility as a parent, and it's a gift that you give to your whole family, right? Because the more compassion you offer yourself, the more safety and connection your children will feel. And it's not about being perfect, right? Getting your own emotional house in order, it's not about being perfect. It's just about learning how to recognize what's happening inside of you and offering yourself kindness and showing up to your relationships from that grounded place, right? because that's what gives kids the emotional blueprint that they carry forward into their lives.
Yeah, and I see that too on the financial side of things. When people have accumulated a certain level of wealth and they keep going on, they keep going on, and no doubt it's passion driven. But when we start doing plans and we ask, well, okay, what do you want to do? As opposed to us giving them a plan that doesn't reflect their family, their principles, their wishes, the reason why. If I don't infuse the plan with what is important to them, they're following my plan, and my plan is very different from their plan, right? And it
Yeah,
also allows the professional, the business owner, the person, the breadwinner, to take stock and say, are these things still feeling good? Am I still aligned with what's important to me? Why am I working so hard? Uh, what do I ultimately want to do with everything I've built? Right. And it could be anything from, I don't want to derail my kids' choices in life because I gave them too much,
yeah,
to I want to use the last dollar of my money and I want them to have their own beginnings, or I
mm,
want X behind. It's a really personal conversation, and it's not a time to judge, but it's important that
yeah,
people stop and understand, why are you doing this? And
yeah,
then having the conversation with a family, because this family will only assume same thing. You're taking the responsibility and the possibility from the family members to sit down and say, how do we contribute to this? Do you
yeah,
still need to work so hard? Do you think we would prefer spending time with you? Or we love seeing you so driven and building this. How can I be part of it? So many assumptions happen when people don't sit down and figure out their where am I and check their temperature. And I think as a parent, it's the same, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think, what you're talking about is about your values, right? Like what drives what you do and why you're doing it. So what's beneath it? What's your motivation, right? Like in business, we talk about having a why, right? But in parenting, we talk about the motivation. What's the motivation beneath what you're doing? So, in the example we had before of a parent intervening and doing things for the child, what's the parent's motivation? And that's part of what I do in my work with parents is we get beneath what's happening on the surface. They come to me and they talk about what's going on in the household, what the relationships look like, what's observable. And then we go beneath that, right? We go, what's the motivation for you intervening? It's usually that parent has their own agenda. And as you said, it's not a collaboration, right? They're not sharing that with anybody. But when I work with parents, we bring all that's being carried on the inside has to come to the surface, right? So I help parents bring all that to the surface. What's their motivation? What are their fears? What's driving their behavior? And then they develop skills to actually talk about that with their children in a way that, again, models what it means to be a healthy, well-rounded human, right? Which means expressing and having that understanding of yourself and being reflective.
But then how do you combine that with the culture that celebrates busyness and burnout, and how do you rewrite the narrative that's of what success and strength look like, especially
Oh
for
my
women?
gosh. Yeah, this idea of burnout is pervasive right now, and this idea of the busyness. And you're right, we live in a culture that treats burnout like a badge of honor, right? Like stress, especially for parents. Being stressed and busy, it's like it's seen as a sign that you're doing things right. That you're productive, you're self-sacrificing, you're strong. That's what people think that is. But underneath that is this deeper belief that our value is tied to how much we're doing. And
Is
if
it
we
a
think
sense of
about that,
I'm not good enough? I'm not good
yeah,
enough.
it's that sense of inadequacy, right? So it comes from that underneath, like I'm not good enough unless I'm doing more. So we've tied somehow, that's apparent, and it's many, many people, myself included, right? Myself included, but somewhere at the core, that's a parent who has somewhere along the line in their upbringing, they have attached their value to how much they do. So it's about the doing, right? That if
Right.
we slow down, then we're falling behind. That rest equals weakness, right? So we end up with this what I call this quiet epidemic of parents who all feel inadequate, right? So they keep trying to earn their worth by doing more. And the cost to that is huge. It's huge, right? We lose connection with ourselves. We lose connection with our kids, true connection, because again, when I work with families, we talk about what true connection is. And we lose connection with what we actually care about, which is what you were alluding to before. Like, what are your values? What matters to you? Right? So to rewrite that narrative, as you said, we have to redefine what success and strength look like. Right? So what if, I like to ask parents to ponder this and really, reflect on this and journal about it. What if success meant being emotionally available instead of endlessly busy, right? What if strength looked like asking for support, right? Setting a personal boundary, or even pausing long enough to feel your feelings, right? That's where the healing starts. Not doing more, but actually learning how to let enough be enough.
Is it a matter of lack of practice and fear, because I've never done it before, that I'm scared I'm going to do it wrong?
What's it? I mean, yes, but give me what the it is. I say parents are all afraid of doing it wrong.
And stopping and realizing if you're doing the parenting right, if you're doing from my perspective, the financial buildup of the nest egg, however big it is.
Yeah.
If there's a lot easier to go to work than to sit down in quiet. It's a lot easier to hang out with friends and find what really hurts or scares you or you want more of, or you're curious to try. It's easier to just keep doing what has been
absolutely
more or less working.
For sure. And I think fear is a huge part. I mean, I know in the parenting circles that I'm in, fear is a huge driving force for a lot of behavior, right? And that's why I talk about there's the observable behavior and there's what's the motivation beneath it. Fear is a huge thing. Parents are afraid that they're doing it wrong, that they're making mistakes, that they're messing up their children. I hear this all the time. There's a pervasive avoidance of reflection, right? Of taking stock, like you said, of kind of stopping, because it can be painful. It can be painful to become aware of your shortcomings, to become aware of, what needs to change, what's underdeveloped. But think about a business. If you never took stock of your business, if you never looked to see what are my sales, what do my customers say? You never ask for, think about that. I do this a lot because I work with a lot of high functioning, business executives who are parents, right? So when I make the analogy about business, they get it like that, right? Because that would be irresponsible business ownership. That would be irresponsible, right? How would you know where to go? And that's why, parents think it's just today. Let me just get through today, check all the boxes, and then, phew, I can go to bed and I've succeeded. But it's not like that. But that fear of looking at yourself at the end of the day to say, how did I do today? Where did I fall short? What could I do a little bit differently? Which is what a good, business manager does.
Do they?
I haven't worked. Do they not? I thought they did, but or they know that they should at least, right? Isn't that kind of you?
It's a little bit like golf. You know the principle, but do you apply it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but with parenting, people don't even equate that principle. So when I bring this, in my work with parents, it's new. This concept that you have to be reflective. And one of the things I offer parents, because what you said, you brought up this really important point about fear, right? And that parents, the avoidance, right? I'd rather just do more. I'd rather just, spend more, buy more for my kids, have our lives look a certain way, than actually sit and have the conversation about what's going on beneath the surface and emotionally. What I offer parents is the idea of repair. And again, I'm not a business person, so I don't know that I should go the analogy, but the idea of repair is that in relationships, you are always going to falter. I don't even want to use the words mess up because language is so powerful, but you're going to falter, right? There are going to be moments in your relationships with everybody where you're not going to be your best. Think about your best friend, your sister, your mother, your neighbor. There are moments where you're in a hurry, you're thinking about other things, and so you're short with people, you know? You didn't sound so nice. You weren't as polite. And so what do? You go back to the neighbor, you knock on the door, and you say, listen, earlier, you know, when the sprinkler got me, I was on my way to work, and I really shouldn't have shouted like that, right? You go back, that's a repair. So I teach parents this opportunity, which is a gift, where they can repair, where if you learn to take on the skill of reflection, which I teach parents is a daily thing, like going to the gym, you're going to take stock of how the day went, or even last week or last month, and it doesn't matter. There's no statute of limitations in parenting, which is great. And there isn't. We can talk about that. And then you can go back and make a repair, right? And what a repair looks like, regardless of the age of the child, is you say to them when you see them next, I wanted to mention that last week or yesterday or this morning, when you wanted to talk to me about your school project and I didn't really pay attention. I really thought a lot about that, and I saw your face and I saw how disappointed you were. And I really meant to give you more time. And so I'm going to try to do that next time. Like, you go in with something where you're real. And what you're doing then is there are so many things happening in that moment. You're offering that repair, which is like a vitamin for your relationship with your child. So you're fortifying your relationship with a nutrient. And you're modeling. You are always modeling. So now that child has had the dual experience of feeling, wow, my parent thinks about me, they care about me, they noticed what happened the other day. It wasn't just me. They want to do better. They care. And they've taken in that model of, this is what it means to be an adult. This is how adults act. Adults aren't afraid to go back and say, listen, I wasn't at my best earlier, and I know I should have done better with you. And so I'm going to try to do that next time.
And I see you.
Yeah. And I see you and I get it, right? It's not dismissive. It's not like what parents will tend to do is, you tried to come and talk to me about your project, but I was busy. I was on my way to work. So it's defense, justification, which is disconnection, right? What I offer parents is learning the skill, which is connection. And trust me, it's like, imagine starting yoga and it's like the most awkward thing to go and hold a pose. Like, it's awkward at the beginning for a lot of parents. So when you talk about this fear, parents are like, I don't know how to try something different. And they usually mess up at the beginning because it's a skill to be able to go back and be authentic and be genuine and talk from the heart and be vulnerable and have humility. And parents don't naturally understand the value of those things. So over time, that's a new skill they can develop.
Because I don't know where it was assumed that we need to know everything. And in reality, like when I talk to my friends and I go, what are you going through right now? And how are you dealing with it? And now I keep hearing the concept of don't be afraid to fail. And I don't think you fail until you stop trying. And you're bound to make mistakes. And then from the financial side of things, you tried this, it didn't work. Building your business, you tried this, it didn't work. And you keep trying it. So a mistake is truly a missed take. Like, if this is the bullseye, you kind of like went this way. Okay, let's try again. And it didn't work. And it didn't happen. And it's really until you hit the bullseye that you move on to the next thing. And that keeps you human and it keeps you trying. And that's what I tell people. The fact I wasn't born knowing, what having a financial house in order was, but I learned the rough way. So I'm inviting people not to learn the rough way. How there are certain things that need to be looked after. And I know that the busyness, the social pressure, the work pressure, the financial pressure, the everyday pressure keeps people from getting their house in order, the financial house in order. I know, lived her firsthand, what happens if you don't. And I know that, and I had to learn from scratch, right? And being curious and learned, and I found the passion and I have my mission, and it's normalizing the money conversation with kids and realizing that nothing is ever so serious. No mistake is ever so serious if it's acknowledged and worked on. And maybe your family members have input or have the support. I find so many business owners with the entire weight on their backs. I'm like, why? You're also
Mm,
robbing your spouse from learning. You're also robbing your children from learning.
yeah.
And I say this is a marathon. And we know that at some point in life, you're going to have to run the marathon.
Yeah.
And that's for spouses or kids of being involved with the financial affairs of parents.
Yeah.
You've got two options. Either you start training now little by little, couch to 5K, couch, take, or one day you might end up with a marathon in your hands and you have to run and you have no choice.
Yeah.
So either you're going to end up with a heart attack, or the following day, it's going to be very, very painful. So you might start practicing, getting, acquainted with terms and be curious and seek advice and, professionals. You're not alone. I mean, the one thing humans are social. We live in a community. Why can't we leverage our community and find our feathers to fly together, right?
Yeah.
So and it's kind of like making it comfortable. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be curious, and also
Right.
telling your kids that they're going to make mistakes and you're going to be there for them.
Absolutely. And I love everything you're saying. And it's, what's interesting is there's nuance in all of that. And the idea of making mistakes, right? So normalizing making mistakes and kind of using them. I mean, we all know it. Like if you ask anyone, they would agree. Oh, of course, yeah, you need to make mistakes because you learn from your mistakes. Like nobody would disagree with that. But most people carry this shame around making mistakes. So there are people who won't act because they're afraid of the mistakes. And there are people who won't own their mistakes because they have shame attached to that. So again, we're getting the what's beneath the surface. So I agree with everything you're saying. And whether it's financial literacy or emotional literacy, I think as parents, people need to practice some skills, because for myself, when I think about, let's say, finances, which again is not my arena, but I was a child in a family, working class parents, where there was a lot of financial stress, and the atmosphere in the house was financial stress. So how my parents talked about finances and talked about money was the emotional soup that I was raised in, right? And so you absorb that. And from an emotional perspective as well. So I think I'm agreeing with you that there's this idea of, open up the conversation and allow your family members, your community members to be a part of it, but also learn how to talk about those things. Because there are ways to talk about it that are healthy, and there are less healthy ways to talk about it.
And you can only try. You have to start somewhere, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you're in the business of emotional legacy. What's the one thing parents can start doing today that will positively shape their child's sense of self 10 years from now?
Right. I love that idea. I love that phrase, emotional legacy, because that's exactly what we leave behind, right? In our children, not just the rules we set out and the routines, right? And the things that we did, but how it felt to be parented by us. That emotional imprint shapes how our kids are going to see themselves, right? And how they show up in the world as adults. So I think one of the biggest shifts that I would encourage parents to make is to stop thinking only about raising children, as I said earlier, and start thinking about raising future adults. Like I say, you're playing the long game. I always tell parents, you're playing the long game. Who do you hope your child becomes at 30? What qualities do you want them to embody, right? Like that becomes your why, right? Your emotional mission statement as a parent. So if there's one thing parents can start doing to shape that emotional legacy, I'd say start naming your emotions, your own emotions, out loud and in real time, right? So that you're kind of narrating your inner world in a way that your child or anyone else can see and learn from. So if, for example, me, I started doing this when I started practicing this work. My kids were little, they're all adults now. But I took on this practice and I would do something like this. So let's say I had a really big meeting. So let's say a big meeting at the bank. That's what came up for me based on our conversation. So, and I was feeling a certain way. So I would say out loud to myself as I'm getting ready, my kids are around, doing their own thing, but they're around. I would say, I'm feeling really nervous about this big meeting I have. So I think I'm gonna get a glass of water and I'm gonna sit down and take a few breaths. Okay? That small moment teaches your child how to notice, how to name, and how to regulate their emotions. And those are the building blocks of a healthy sense of self, right? So parents think it's about being perfect and acting like you have it all together. And actually, I tell parents I work with that if you are feeling nervous but trying to act normal, your kids are like dogs and they feel you more, like they sense you, they feel your energy, and that matters more than whatever they see. So if they see you trying to act normal, but the energy you're giving off is anxiousness and nervousness, that makes a kid feel insecure because things don't add up. Things don't add up. They're like, my world is not making sense. You want to always be making sense to your kids. So if you're feeling nervous, you say, wow, I'm feeling really nervous about this. And then you implement a strategy or talk about a strategy, right? So it's not about being perfect because there is no perfect. You just need to be emotionally honest in ways that your child can witness. And that's what builds that emotional fluency. So over time, all of those really small, consistent moments become that emotional legacy, as you said, right? That they carry into adulthood. So it's not what you say. It's not what you say. It's what your child experiences through your presence, right? Through your honesty and the way that you treat yourself. So I'd say the most powerful thing you can do is show them what it looks like to feel something, to name something, and then to meet that with self-compassion.
Yeah, no, and I think also normalizing the very possibility that not having all the answers is perfectly normal.
Yes.
Because then they'll say, okay, mom doesn't know what she's doing, dad doesn't know what, but they're finding it out, and that they're at least
Yeah.
I'm not trying to guess that who's a good one, who's the bad one, who's got me,
Yeah.
am I safe?
Right. Oh yeah. And then even more, we can add to that, right? So normalizing not knowing everything, normalizing, so also flipping it so that when your child even asks you something, that rather than focus on whether you have the answer or don't have the answer, focus on the fact that they were curious and celebrate that and highlight that, right? Like, wow, that's a great question. I didn't even know you were thinking about the planets and the stars or whatever it is, right? I didn't even know you were thinking about cows and milk and how it gets to the fridge. Like you're really thinking about that stuff. Like you're really curious about it. Highlight the child, right? I talk about in my work, I talk about the two parts of every exchange you have with your child or with anyone. The content, right? So the milk, the stars, the universe, the planets, and then the emotion. And that the content always matters less. That the relationship and the feeling and the emotion is what really matters. And you always want to be leading with the relationship. And the content can follow, but the content always matters less. Your kids come up, the young kids come up and ask you those random questions about why is the sky blue? Why is the water this? They might want to know, but they're looking to connect with you. They're looking for that connection. That's what they want. They want the relationship. They don't really care as much about the content. So all these parents that are out there Googling, I don't know, let's find out. You're losing the moment. You've squandered it because you didn't actually sit and look at your kid in the eyes and say, you're curious about why grass is green? Really? That's what you're thinking about? I've walked on grass my whole life and I never thought about why it's green. But you're curious about it. That's the vitamin, I say. It's a nutrient for the relationship, and that matters way more than you knowing all the answers or having it all together.
I mean, at the end of the day, a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old doesn't really need the accuracy of your response.
You don't need Google. You don't need Google. You don't need ChatGPT. You just need to be in relationship with your kid.
Right. And it's fascinating because your world and my world are very similar, obviously. And the financial world has the emotional layer on top. where the sense of not being enough is real, and then trying to be the perfect parent, the perfect this, the perfect that, working hard. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But if you look back at your own journey as a professional and as a parent, what have been, or give me one bold choice that changed everything for you? When did you say, get my house in order?
Oh my gosh. Bold choices. I think I've had a lot of bold choice moments. I guess one of the boldest choices I ever made was going back to school in my 50s to become a registered psychotherapist. I'd already spent years, decades supporting families, right, in different capacities. I worked in social service, as I said. I worked in education. So I was doing the work. I was counseling. I was supporting raising my 3 kids on my own. I was always in parenting spaces, but something in me, I always knew that I wanted to go deeper. So I wanted to formalize that work and sit with people, not just as a helper, but as a therapist. And so that meant starting over, right? Which can be scary, really scary, right? I had made some, at the time, I'd made some really significant changes in my personal life, changes that required a lot of emotional courage. And I wasn't sure if it was, too late, if it was going to be too much, if I was like too far along in my life to start again. But, I also knew that from a place of integrity, I couldn't keep asking other people to step into their growth if I wasn't willing to do the same thing, right? So I started grad school at 53 with a full life behind me, with a full-time job, and, through a pandemic. And I had more that I wanted to build, and I knew that. I knew that I wasn't done. So that choice changed everything. I think it brought me into better alignment with the kind of work I'm meant to do. It helped me reconnect with my own emotional truth. And I guess most importantly, it allowed me to model something different for my clients and my kids, right, who were emerging adults. And showing them that change is always possible, right? That starting again isn't failure, it's growth. That would be probably the bold choice that really shaped not just my professional path, but like that emotional legacy that you talk about, right? It's part of what makes my work as meaningful as it is to me.
And it's realigning with your values, right? And again, you're modeling for your children that it's okay.
Yeah. Which never stops. Like you're modeling, my kids are all adults, but you're always modeling. They're always looking to you to see how you respond to life. Even as they're, living their own lives, you're still somebody that is shaping their worldview. Like it doesn't stop, actually.
And I guess it's fine to change your mind too, right? Things change, circumstances change.
Yeah.
I mean, selfish has a much more negative connotation than I think it should have, or maybe there's a better word for that. But you need to sit down and figure out what's important to you, what works for you, and what doesn't.
Yeah. I think language is really powerful. People who work with me hear me say that a lot until it's like ingrained into their minds. And I agree with you. The word selfish has taken on this negative, there's a negative connotation to it. There should be a better word. There should be another word. I think that what people consider selfish is actually self-care. And I'm a huge advocate of that. So, yeah.
So in your words or in your world, what does a well parent actually look like? And how does their clarity ripple out into their family, their work, or their legacy?
So, yeah, it's why I named my practice Parent Wellness, right? I think about wellness a lot. When I think about what a well parent looks like, I think about someone who's made that decision to care for themselves, right? In meaningful, sustainable ways. Like sustainability is really important. So I'm not just talking about, bubble baths and spa days, but like the kind of self-care that helps people feel grounded in who they are, right? We talked earlier about that busyness, like what we do, and then there's how we are, right? There's doing and there's being. So a well parent slows down, right? They reflect. They ask for help. They give themselves permission to be human, like we've been talking about, right? Making those mistakes. They spend time in quiet spaces. There's something that people aren't doing enough of. They journal, right? They move their bodies. They listen to music. They take walks in nature, not because it's trendy, right? But because they understand that their nervous system sets the tone for their whole family, right? That their presence is the emotional environment that children grow up in. Like I teach parents that you are an environment. You're an emotional environment that your children are experiencing all the time, right? So with that kind of wellness comes clarity, like you said, right? With that kind of wellness, you get that clarity about what truly matters to you, right? What you can let go of, what's okay to let go of, what kind of parent you want to be. And then there's, like you said, the ripple effect outwards, right? Which is powerful because that shapes how you show up at work, right? You're more present, you have more boundaries, you're more attuned to other people, and it changes the tone in your home, right? When you are a well parent, you have more warmth, you offer more safety, more connection, right? And then over time, that becomes the legacy, like you said, right? This idea of legacy is powerful. Not just what you gave your children, right? Like you talk about the finances and, the giving and the having and the doing, right? It's not about that. It's how you made your children feel, how your presence impacted the way they felt. Those feelings of being safe, of being seen, of being loved, right? That's what children will carry into every relationship they have moving forward for the rest of their lives.
And I mean, even if you try, there will be days that you will be busy. There will be days that you will have to pull all-nighters. There will be days that stress will keep you up at night because something didn't go through or something went wrong or something. Both in your world and my world, it doesn't matter how affluent people are. There's a minimum level of financial planning or self-awareness or alignment and analysis that everybody needs to do, because otherwise you're just perpetuating stress that kills you,
Yeah.
period. Kills
Yes.
relationship, kills the harmony in the family. When we plan, it's rarely about money. It's usually, I want harmony in the family. I want my kids to get
Yeah.
along. I want to make sure that we still talk to each other later on, that we're all
Yes.
financially okay, whatever that okay means to every person.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with you. And if you know that you don't know, that's fine. But what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. And taking stock is the first step, right? Taking stock and just looking at yourself and saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't know financial literacy. I don't know how to make sense of my money, right? You have to know where you are. Otherwise, you don't know how to get anywhere else. And there's that sense of responsibility we talked about, right? It's responsible behavior to reflect, and it's responsible behavior to say, I don't know how to do this, right? So it's like going to I remember once, I think it might have been my son, when he was really young, we were like, oh, maybe we'll sign you up for hockey. And he was like, but I don't know how to play hockey. I'll never forget that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why we're going to sign you up for hockey. But they're going to start by teaching you how to skate, right? Because like he couldn't get it. He couldn't see that. How are you going to sign me up for hockey? I don't know how to do that. Yeah, but it starts with you don't know how to do that. And then you learn how to skate, and you learn how to stop, and you learn how to hold the stick, and you learn how to play hockey. That you have to know where you're at.
It's going to hurt. And
they're going to teach you how to stand up, and they're going to teach you all of these things. So this idea of, we go into skill development. So whether it's money conversations or emotional conversations, you need a starting point. Otherwise, like you said, you're just a hamster on a hamster wheel, repeating the same things and not really getting anywhere. And is that really living? No, that's just surviving. And what you and I want is for people to thrive, both in their emotional lives and in their financial lives.
And if we're trying to teach our kids responsibility, I think it has to start with ourselves being responsible.
Yes, absolutely.
So Sharyn, thank you so much, because you remind us that clarity, honesty, compassion, self-awareness and intentionality aren't just feel-good ideas. They're the foundation for meaningful conversations, much more impactful and honestly pleasant parenting, especially when stakes are high. To our listeners, if you took something away from this episode, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. These are conversations that are normal, they're natural. We all go through it at different times of life, and they help you get your house in order, your emotional, your financial, your mental house in order. It's not just on paper, but it's in how you show up for yourself and the people you love. I'm Elke Rubach. Thank you for listening. And until next time, and please take care of what matters most.